Greetings. Welcome to a new video. So in this video I will use a cinema verite approach, which means I'm too lazy to figure out how to do the screen capture. You know, it's like Kazam on Linux, and then you got to figure it out on Windows. I'm just going to hold the camera here, and you'll have to deal with that. But we're going to start off with a very large man in a skirt throwing a hammer, and it's very entertaining. There's nothing funny about that, not least of all if you are being hit by the hammer. So let's watch this guy throw a hammer. Big man.
Okay, thank you.
There he goes.
Yeah, thanks mate. Just like that, you're alright. Well done, mate.
Alright, I liked it. Alright, here's another Scottish guy in a skirt. Large man throwing a hammer. That one wasn't good because you couldn't see where he ended up at the end. Here's one in slow motion. And I don't spend all my time watching men throw hammers. I'm sure there's a joke there, but it's like, sodomy is so promoted now, there's like no joke left or whatever. I'm impressed that he's a specimen. But what I'm going to show you actually is very funny. And we'll see it right there. Did you catch it? So you see, when he released the hammer, he didn't fall backwards. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Those are the rules of the road that we go by given us by the great genius of Isaac Newton. But he didn't fall backwards. Yet, you can see the spotter there. If he got hit by that hammer, he's going to fall backwards. He's going to end up in the hospital, I would think. So what's going on? And this goes back to why I titled this, Why Didn't David Break His Hand? And I was speaking, of course, about the battle between David and Goliath. And here's a bunch of pictures. So let's see if we can zoom in. There's a good one. There's one. So you see he's kind of doing the same thing with the slingshot those guys were doing with the hammer. And you're left with the fact that the slingshot, the stone, impacted Goliath's forehead sufficient to knock him out and perhaps kill him, fracture it, or they say David walked up and then drew Goliath's sword and cut his head off. So it knocked him out and or fractured his skull. But David's hand and wrist was fine. How can that be if for each reaction there is an equal and opposite reaction? So we've got a problem. Well, I won't say we have a problem. We have an observation that we all know intuitively, but we don't sort of acknowledge, oftentimes consciously. And that is, when you're swinging something like that and you release it, there's no reactionary force. So I imagine you're thinking, that's crazy talk. And really, if there's one scientist that I probably respect most, it's Newton. But this does not fit with Newton's third law of motion, that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So if you're like me, it's, well, David killed someone with that, How do I get to kill people with this? How can I call down fire from the sky with it? All right, I'll be honest. That wasn't the first thing I thought of. Maybe next time it would be, okay? I thought of something different. But other people, of course, their immediate first thought was, how do you weaponize this? And so we have the paper record of how this was weaponized. And we can look at that and confirm that what I'm saying does not follow Newtonian mechanics. So if you do a search on Dread centrifugal gun, the second result, after this is also worth looking at, is, this from Defense Review, the Dread weapon system, and where is it? Well, this is a lengthy article. They talk about this thing shooting out, I think they said 8,000 feet per second. I think a bullet is maybe 3,000 feet per second, and so on and so forth, and that it has no recoil. And so you go there, and that brings you to their brochure. Here's their brochure. What's the first thing on the brochure? No recoil. So you have a rifle shooting 8,000 feet per second with no recoil. Now, this didn't get developed. They were talking about putting it on helicopters and tanks, but once you had that thing spinning like that, that's one hell of a gyroscope. This thing would fly much, much, much differently with this thing spinning. But they're right that it has no recoil. So, I'm sure that in non-public areas, this has probably been developed. But, once you put it on a helicopter, they used to have, like carnival shows where they would spin something like that and, strong man lift it up. And you couldn't because of the change in inertial mass from spinning objects. So let's just leave all that out for now. We don't want to go too much into there. All we're talking about here is the release from a Ferris wheel or from a merry-go-round has no recoil, and hence it violates Newton's third law of motion. If we go back here, then the third result was this, the boss, a new handheld centrifugal gun. That's awesome. And so this was from 2020, and now you can't find anything on the internet about the boss. But it's standard for battery-operated slingshot system. So, they were going back to David, too. Dynamic Technologies, which you can find them, but you can't find anything about this, even though this was from 2020. I found the patent from Dynamic Technologies for this. And you can also find the patent. Here's the patent for the first centrifugal gun back, this was like 1919, yes, July of 1919. And this was the first centrifugal gun. That's going back to Wikipedia. So there was that one, and then there's this one, and I guess this is like to shoot squirrels. But I don't think it really took off because you can't find anything about it now, even though this was just like 2-3 years ago. But when we look at, this thing that was released, as a I'd love to have one released there. What are they saying? Advantages. First one, no recoil. No recoil. So if we just back up a moment from the boss and the Dread centrifugal gun system that they wanted to put on helicopters and tanks. And, think about it. If you weren't like trying to kill people or varmints with this, I mean, is there anything else you might do with an object that releases without a recoil? Okay. And so if you can do that, then you can move from point A to point B with, how would you describe it? Massless propulsion. You don't need to shoot something out the other end in order to move, because it's violating Newton's third law of motion. So to kind of give a real life example of this and sort of bring this home, here we're going back to this first video, and the guy's releasing this, but he's not falling backwards, even though that's shooting out there, and if it hit one of the line judges, they would fall backwards. So we can do a thought experiment of, let's say this guy's very accurate and he shoots this thing 180 degrees out all the time, and he's on a set of train cars, and the train cars will have sandbags at the end. So he throws this out, lands at the end of the however far he throws it, and it would push the train forward. There's no recoil force. Now the line judge picks up this and he walks it back to him. And if you know physics from high school, if you were picking up, say, a bowling ball and walking to the other end of a train car, the center of mass of the train car doesn't change. The train car might go a little bit, but that's because the center of mass has gone to here. And then it goes back here, and the center of mass goes to there. The center of mass doesn't change. Whereas here, there was no recoil force, so therefore, the train would move forward. The judge would grab this, walk it back to him. The train wouldn't move. And then he'd say, are you tired? Looks like you got a bit of a beer belly there. You tired? Swing it again, baby. And he would swing it again, and the train would move forward, and the line judge would walk it back, and the train would not move backwards, because he would walk it back, but then when he walked back, the center of mass would always be the same. I mean, what I'm saying there, aside from the part that there's no recoil force there, is all extremely conventional physics. If a bowling alley was on a skateboard, when he bowled the thing, it would move forward, and then when the bowling ball came back, it would move back, and it would never change its position, no matter how many times they kept bowling and the ball's coming back, because there would be a certain amount of mass going there and a certain mass coming back, and there would be an equal and opposite reaction. There's no equal and opposite reaction when he releases that. Otherwise, he would have been whoop. But that didn't happen, just as David didn't break his hand. So the train would move forward, and then you could walk it back there. Now, can we confirm this? Yes, you could confirm it in 4 easy steps. And I brought up Tinkercad here you would probably use Tinkercad some, but I'll just explain it. So, I talked about the idea of a hammer thrower on railroad cars. So just have a skateboard. Here are your first 2 experiments. You have a skateboard. It doesn't have to be a skateboard, but you get the idea. Something like a skateboard, and you take a ball of steel, and you have a spring that you can press. It's on the skateboard. Compress the spring, the ball of steel there. Release the ball. Whoosh! The ball shoots out. The skateboard goes the other way. That's like what we do with rockets. Ooh, it's rocket science. That's what we do with rockets. Now, to confirm the rest of Newtonian physics, you have the skateboard with the ball, and this time you have a board at the end of the skateboard. Maybe put some rubber foam there so it doesn't hurt the board when it. So now the ball releases, it shoots backwards, it hits the end of the skateboard that it's attached to, and it shoots forward. It ends up in the exact same place. Now you do an experiment on the same skateboard. You get rid of the ball with the spring. You have a ball attached to something going around in a circle. And it could be attached. I'm not sure how you'd want to attach it. You could attach it like to an electromagnet, so that when you cut off the power to the electromagnet, now it releases. But I'm not sure how strong of an electromagnet. I mean, you don't want the electromagnet being like 5 pounds or something like that. Or you could just have it, with the trapdoor with a stepper motor that releases the trapdoor, say, on an optical signal. But you want a ball spinning in a circle, and then when you give the signal, the ball is released from the circle. And so if this is correct, you have it there. It's released from the circle. The ball shoots out. The skateboard does not move backwards. It just sits there, dead in the water. Then you do the same experiment, and again, you put a wall there, put some foam there so it doesn't hurt the wall. You release this. There's no backwards, from it being released. The ball hits there, and the skateboard moves forward. And if you see that, then you've got everything. So 4 experiments. The first 2 just confirm Newton, and the second 2 are what you see with the Scottish Highland Games and with King David and King Goliath going at it. And if that works, then you have motion without reactionary, propulsion, rocket propulsion out the other end. So it wouldn't be like, I don't think it would be real easy to develop in terms of, like having a car. Like the first thing you think of is a centrifuge and a bunch of little marbles, and then the marbles flow back. But then to actually make this thing work, what you probably want is like a cyclotron. And, I don't know about this stuff. I imagine cyclotron particles are charged, and then you would have like a magnetic path for them to go back, just like the judge walking the hammer back. You would have a magnetic path for the things to walk back to the start of the cyclotron. And yeah, with that, you could get around the solar system. And the cool thing would be, it would be just like every science fiction movie. Because, you wouldn't want it, boom, and it hits, your big block of metal there. And you're in the spaceship here, but you got to go through all that heat. So what you would want is a spaceship, and then you want it like shooting there and there, and then this thing would glow red hot. And so it'd be like every science fiction movie. Boom, boom, boom. Then that would glow red hot, and the spaceship would go out in space. But it would look just like every science fiction movie. And so that's how you get around the solar system. Yay. So